So welcome to the node.js uvwasi team meeting for April 12th, 2023. We'll follow our approach of looking at the issues that were tagged for the agenda, which was issue number 196 in the repo. Meeting for April 12th, 2023. Okay, so before we get started, does anybody have any announcements or things I'd like to share? Okay, if not, let's move on to the agenda items. I do have one to add at the end, but we can do that at the end. The first one is WASI Preview 1, FD Read Deer ignores cookie argument 47193. I think last time, Colin, you said you might have time to take a look at that.
Yeah, I did take a look at it. I went through the person's reproduction, which has all kinds of extra logging stuff in there that kind of threw me off at first.
Okay.
But I was able to confirm after I removed all that it is a bug, at least on M1s. Okay. So I haven't had time to actually, fix the bug yet, but I was able to confirm it's a bug.
Okay. And like, do you think it's in UV or uvwasi itself, or just out of interest?
My guess is that it's in uvwasi, but I haven't narrowed it down to that or libuv, but I would say I'm 95% sure it's in uvwasi.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how like an architecture affects that, but yeah, okay. Sounds good. So you've making progress and can recreate it. So yeah, that's the most important.
So I think the way the architecture plays into it is streaming reader is not guaranteed any type of sorting order when it returns entries. So from one platform to another, those could be different. So I think it has something to do with the way it's filling up the buffer.
Right. Okay. So that would be like not necessarily a bug that's like M1 specific. It's just that M1 surfaces it because it works in a different way. Is that right? Or I'm still misinterpreting that?
I think that's my take on it, is it has to do with the order in which the results are returned.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, in core, when we brought in like AIX and some other platforms, we found lots of sort of test issues, a bunch of test issues, and also, a few real issues where the code made an assumption which it shouldn't have made, but always worked because on the platforms it was tested on before, that assumption held true, right? This sounds like it could be the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, interesting. Yes, that's a bit of an example of like the more platforms that you test on, better test coverage you end up with too. So
definitely.
Is there an action item to get some more architectures and things for our test matrix? Because right now we're only able to use Mac, Windows, and Linux x86 because that's what we're running on the GitHub Actions, right? There might be another one that we were building, Android, I believe, but that's just doing. I assume it's a cross compile. I actually don't know, but maybe we need to have more test infrastructure, CI infrastructure.
So I think the Android job is actually just confirming that it builds. I mean, we do have probably even more extensive tests in Node itself, which runs on significantly more platforms. But yeah, if we wanted to do that for uvwasi itself, we could do something like what libuv does, is run everything via QEMU.
yeah, or even like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure libuv still does use some Jenkins jobs, right? Which run on additional platforms that we have in the Node CI that aren't available in GitHub Actions necessarily.
I haven't seen anyone but me use the Jenkins.
Right. Okay. They're there, but nobody runs them is the problem, I guess.
Yeah. Ever since we got everything running in GitHub Actions, that's what most of the libuv maintainers seem to do.
Right. Well, certainly the running under QEMU. How do you say that? QEMU?
I've heard different people pronounce it different ways. I always heard Kimu, or at least that's how
Kimu,
I
okay.
heard it. But yeah, I think everyone, I think we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting, if getting it running on that is probably the easiest, right? If, well, I don't know, buddy, I don't know how easy that is, but sometimes like setting up a whole nother set of Jenkins flows is not necessarily easy. So
It's from what I remember when it was being set up in libuv, it's not particularly difficult. I mean, we lifted it from WASM 3, who was doing it. So like, it's pretty easy to copy paste.
and you can get most architectures like Power and S390. Does it also let you, like, would it let us run M1 on our? Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure of what every architecture is that we can test through it, but yeah, like I said, look through the libuv ones and see what jumps out there.
My understanding is that with M1, the problem is the Apple's OS licensing, not whether QEMU is able to do it. Yeah, I think we're still waiting after years for GitHub runners for M1, unfortunately.
And they keep getting kicked back further and further. I watch the GitHub public roadmap, and it moves quarter to quarter, keeps shifting backward.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging to develop for Apple with their policy on virtualization.
I guess in this case, Colin, when you do figure out the problem, we might be able to add a test in at least add a test in the node infra where it would get run.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, that's a last resort, I guess. I mean, we do have a readdir test in the node repository. It just isn't hitting this same condition. So
yeah. Okay, anything more to chat on this one?
not for me.
Okay, the next one is really still the sort of multiple list. I haven't broken them out. At some point we probably should, but so I'll flip over to that one. So number one was the refactor, the build. So uvwasi, anything to discuss on that one? Or
No, I've not had any time.
okay. I think we've already covered number two, which is stabilization. Number three, implementing the 4 stubbed out socket methods. I'm assuming that illness has kind of gotten in the way of that one, right? Maybe I'll follow off with Oscar offline and see if we can just set up a time to get together. That would be good. Snapshot 2, I know we had a pretty good discussion last week on that. I don't know, Guy, if there's anything more makes sense to chat about on that front.
Yeah, I think it's and it was nice to see that the version PR going in. So that's all kind of ready for node 20 now, I take it, for the most part.
That should be, yeah. Raphael confirmed that the version being mandatory will be in 20.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the other one we discussed around making just a sec, I'm trying to remember if I got this right. Yeah, the version being mandatory is the one we talked about last time, where the default for whether exits or not, that'll be switched in Assembler minor, which is landed, but will probably be post 20 going out.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing was like that if we need to change the behavior of the start function or rename it to command or run or something like that. But again, that seems fine to do on some kind of minor or deprecation path. I don't feel like that's pressing necessarily.
Yeah, and it almost seems like we should wait a bit to see how snapshot 2, like once we start to implement snapshot 2, that might be one of sort of the early things, but waiting until then makes sense to me.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of time recently to dig into that stuff, but I'm hoping to do some more prototyping soon. So yeah.
Sounds good. And then the last one we just had was finding additional people to contribute. So maybe I should go and close this issue and open ones for the to have individual discussions. Like I think opening one for Snapshot 2, just where we can have like a kind of a record of, you could put updates in, or that kind of stuff as a reference might make sense. And obviously implementing the stubbed out sockets one and the rebuilding the build, breaking those out into separate issues probably makes a lot of sense. I have one other topic, but it can wait. Any other topics or things we should chat about that are on people's minds? So the one I'll mention is we recently landed in the Node project as led by the Next 10 effort. We're trying to sort of build a really lightweight way for teams to get news out, or project news out to periodicals or other places that sort of want to publicize what's going on in the project. So we landed what we think is a lightweight process. The idea is like teams like uvwasi could open an issue in their own repo and PR that issue into, there's like a common document in the collaborator guide under the node organization that says like, here's issues from a list of teams, and they're periodically going to paste news. So for example, if we did a new uvwasi release, we could say, hey, we did a new release. Or if we wanted to say like, hey, warning, we were changing, X or something like that. Just a way to like capture things we think which are newsworthy. We could put them in there. And then the Next 10 team is going to go to periodicals like Node Weekly and a few others and say, hey, if you're interested, here's an easy way to find some things that collaborators want to share in terms of news that's going on. So I took an action in the last meeting to ask this team if we're interested in doing that. Does that make any sense? It's not going to be all the teams for sure, right? It's just ones that may want to share some things.
I think it probably makes sense to announce some of the changes that recently landed in Node, because they're breaking changes. So definitely things that should be on people's radar, and things that probably won't, really stand out just in the change log itself. So it might use some explaining and some backstory of why the changes and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good example where we could put like a paragraph, and then hopefully that gets into some of those distribution channels a bit better.
In general, it sounds like a great way to share more widely, because I think one of the problems with the uvwasi project has maybe been like a lack of recognition of what it's capable of. And so having a way to feature the project a bit more, or even the work that the Grain folks are doing on top of it and stuff. I mean, it's all very interesting things that could be interesting techniques to share more widely to people.
Okay, so I guess I'm hearing it sounds like a decent idea. I can go and take the action to like create an issue. It'll just be like, what's new in uvwasi 2023. And then, the idea is any collaborator can go and post, here's some news that we think we should share. We, of course, don't want people like, I'm not going to go in there and say, hey, Red Hat just did blah, 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 right? Like it's meant to be community kind of news. So, but we trust our collaborators to filter that, and then hopefully we can get some of the news channels no, I shouldn't say news channels, but like some of the people who I think might be interested, at least point them to there. And if I was them, I'd be interested to keep an eye on these things occasionally. So. And then, yeah, if everybody starts, if you've got some news, like I think it might make sense to like maybe not put it all at the same time, but like if we started to put a little bit of news as we chatted about things and whatever. But I guess I'd say let's not hold back, but like we don't have to rush to pile everything in there at the same time either. Okay, any other topics or things we should chat about this week? Okay, if not, we'll give everybody a little bit of time back and we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time. Thanks. Talk to everybody later. Bye.